In this week's Farmers Weekly, in an article by Colin Williscroft, a trial of managed aquifer recharge technology in central Hawke's Bay could be underway by next winter, while a Gisborne trial is due to finish at the end of this year. After being unable to find viable locations for above-ground water storage in the district, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council is now focusing its water security program on below ground. Council Regional Water Security Program Director Tom Skerman joins us now. Good evening, Tom. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with the words managed aquifer recharge, let's start there and what this whole pre-feasibility assessment is all about.
So thanks, Sarah, and look, thanks for having me on the show, the opportunity to talk about the program. Managed aquifer recharge is really just taking a cue from nature in many respects, because when you really think about it, water naturally finds its way from the surface into the aquifers, and that's how they are, replenished and resourced. So how I describe managed aquifer recharge is trying to do that purposefully as opposed to accidentally. So we're really hoping just to see through this pilot trial whether it's possible at every is different and the quality works. So we're just really interested to see whether this could be a tool in the toolbox for sort of dealing with our water supply and demand balance.
And Central Hawke's Bay, of course, is a community that is familiar with dry-prone areas. And bringing this in through council, what sort of learnings have you had from other regional councils in their managed aquifer recharge programs that you are modelling in the region, and how different is Hawke's Bay compared to many regions?
So, Sarah, look, I'm sorry, I'm actually having a little bit of a connection problem here, so I'm not sure I fully got your question, but I think you asked me about how is our program similar or different to other programs that have been run around the country, because there are three other, as you've mentioned, I think there's three other programs on, one in Gisborne, one quite a large one in the Hines, and an emerging one in the Oriti district in Southland. So, look, we've been... there's a common thread that runs through those programs around the experts and consultants that have been used, and so we're using in this pilot some very experienced consultants who have worked across all those three projects. So there'll be similarities in terms of the experience that we're bringing. We've been in touch with our Gisborne colleagues. We're going to be having more engagement with the Hines people shortly. But look, we really need to see what the properties of the aquifer are and what it throws up in terms of what we need to understand and potentially how we're going to manage this process in this particular aquifer system.
So, what sort of numbers are we talking here of water that we can inject, into the aquifer? Do you believe?
Well, so look, that's the $64,000 question, and that's why we have to run a pilot and have to run a trial, because we have to figure out whether it is possible, how much water we can get in, and what happens to that water. What is the effect? Does it just go into a shallow system and therefore mostly support base flows and shallow systems, or can we get it deeper into the aquifer and speed up aquifer recovery times and perhaps build a stronger bank of water that we can actually use for abstraction through the summer.
How do you do this? You're injecting it flat out beginning mid-May. How do you actually force it further more than what nature does from rainfall? I'm really intrigued.
Yeah, so look, it's a really good question, and I don't want to stray too far into the technical science of it, because it is you're not talking to a scientist, and so I don't want to ruin it for them, and I don't want to create the wrong expectations in the community of what can be done. Look, it can be done passively. It's done in some areas through wetlands, where wetlands are created and then water is naturally filtered, into the aquifers, stored water, or as in the case of the Gisborne trial, it is, it's actively injected into the water, into the aquifer. Sorry, so the water is abstracted from the river. It's stored. It's got to a quality that makes it safe to inject back into the aquifer, and then it's literally just pumped into the ground.
So you're effectively saying, okay, if we're not going to have above ground water storage, which does have its potentially environmental effects from the build, let's use it and pump the underground diesel tank analogy and store it there. That's what we're looking down the barrel of.
Yeah, or both. And so just a sort of a minor sort of point to make is that, we haven't completely walked away from above ground storage, but we have, the history of above ground storage in Central Hawke's Bay and the Ruataniwha Plains particularly is well known and well understood. And, it's an area that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council invested a lot of time and effort in trying to understand. This time round, that option's not available to us, through, again, through reasons that are well known.
Tom, there's one thing to store water, whether it is above ground or below ground, but when it comes to recharge, take is another thing. How is Hawke's Bay Regional Council working on the take of different irrigators and landowners to make sure that this entire recharge project going beyond pilot will actually work?
Look, that's a very, very challenging and very big question, Sarah. So it's this pilot project is part of a broader Hawke's Bay Regional Council and Provincial Growth Fund project of work looking at water security right across Hawke's Bay. The very core of that program is a thing called the Regional Water Assessment, which we are looking very closely and deeply at the data around our supply of water and the demand for water and how that's likely to change over time, because we're obviously facing some very very strong climatic changes, and East Coast rivers have been shown to probably be the most likely to be affected, adversely affected in that scenario. So we're trying to really understand that picture so that we can understand what's the range of management solutions that we need to be progressing and looking at, and what's the priority around those. And so they sit on both the supply side in terms of, as you talked about, getting more water into the system, but also absolutely on the demand side, and not only for rural communities, but urban communities, and how we manage water. So we're trying to take an incredibly holistic approach to that very, very tricky question you've just asked me.
And with the title of Regional Water Security Program Director, Tom, I think you would have a job for life. For the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, but of course an area that certainly will be a big part of our future with weather patterns changing dramatically. Before we go, you're our last guest of this evening. We are talking about school holidays, Tom. Memories of those school holidays with your children. What are some of those treasured memories around some of the, say, warmer months?
Well, it's a good question, and I think it took me some time to realise that whenever school holidays came along, we'd try to be good parents and go and do something adventurous, and we'd always often leave Hawke's Bay and head to Taupo or head out of town. And I always wondered why there was this incredible stream of traffic going the other way. And so it took me a long time to realise that, or appreciate what a wonderful place Hawke's Bay is and what a fantastic climate we have. And so we got over moving away, and we had a lot of fun staycations here in Hawke's Bay, lots of water and lots of things to do.
This is Sarah's Country.